The first person to notice wasn't a banker. It was a woman buying coffee. She tapped her phone. Payment approved. The receipt blinked up at her. $0.00. She laughed. Free coffee. The barista's hand was shaking because his screen showed the same thing. Every account, every balance, every single name in the system. Zero. Money didn't disappear that morning. It did something worse. It finished its job. For centuries, value had been a number on a screen, nothing more, nothing less. And those numbers decided who ate well, who slept safely, who mattered. Then one morning, the screens went blank. Not dark, blank. And humanity had to answer a question it had been avoiding for generations. What are you worth when no one can prove it anymore? At first, nobody panicked. Banks called it a visual glitch. Payment apps promised balances would return shortly. Governments urged patience while they investigated. But commerce doesn't run on patience. It runs on trust. And trust? Trust lives in numbers. Gas stations stopped taking cards. Online carts froze mid-checkout. ATMs still dispensed cash, but every receipt printed the same haunting line. Balance, $0.00. Not negative, not frozen, not locked, zero. People still had jobs, still had homes, still had fridges full of food, but suddenly none of it could be proven. The silence in the bank wasn't quiet, it was thick, like everyone was holding their breath at once. And in a world built on proof, that changes everything. By midday, something far more dangerous vanished: status. CEOs stood in grocery lines next to janitors. Influencers couldn't flex their success. Executives tried pulling rank, but rank is just a number someone once believed in. Credit scores meaningless, savings accounts empty ghosts, debt erased, but so was everything else. For the first time in modern history, everyone looked equally broke. And that terrified the people who'd spent their lives not being broke. Because money was never just currency, it was permission. Permission to matter, permission to be heard, permission to exist without justifying yourself. And now that permission was gone. Emergency protocols kicked in immediately, backups restored, redundant servers queried, cold storage vaults cracked open. Nothing. The data wasn't deleted, it wasn't corrupted, it wasn't hacked. It was hollow, as if the concept of ownership itself had been scooped out, leaving only the shell of infrastructure behind. Markets couldn't reopen. You can't set a price without comparison, and you can't compare without memory. Without numbers, nothing could be priced. Food wasn't expensive or cheap. Labor wasn't valued or devalued. Everything was undefined. That's when the real question surfaced, the one money had been covering up for centuries. Why should I give this to you when there's nothing forcing me to? I was told this channel would go nowhere, that stories like this were a waste of time, but every person watching right now proves otherwise. If you think ideas like this deserve to exist, hit like and subscribe. Let's keep building something that matters. Without money, value didn't vanish, it mutated. Doctors were fed first, electricians were guarded, farmers became untouchable. People with skills suddenly mattered more than people with titles. Barter returned for about 6 hours. Then it failed, because barter only works when both sides want what the other has. And fear wants everything. So communities began rationing, not by wealth, but by usefulness. If you could fix, grow, heal, build, or defend, you were valuable. If you couldn't, you weren't punished, you were ignored. And in a collapsing world, being ignored is its own kind of death. Violence didn't explode the way movies promised. That's the myth we tell ourselves. What happened was quieter and somehow worse. Entire professions evaporated overnight. Finance, speculation, marketing, middle management. People who once moved millions with a phone call couldn't convince a neighbor to share half a loaf. Meanwhile, those who'd lived paycheck to paycheck, barely surviving in the old world, found themselves strangely prepared. They already knew how to live without a safety net. The real collapse wasn't economic, it was psychological, because people realized something they could never unknow. Money had never been real, but its absence, that was the most real thing they'd ever felt. Eventually, new systems crawled into existence. Councils, reputation ledgers written by hand, skill registries maintained by communities, not digital, not centralized, not hackable, human. Your worth was no longer tied to what you owned, it was tied to what you could contribute tomorrow. Some called it liberation. Finally, merit mattered more than inheritance. Others called it tyranny, because now you couldn't coast, you couldn't hide behind old achievements or family money. You had to prove yourself every single day. And if you couldn't, well, you learned what irrelevance felt like. Years later, historians still argue about what really caused the glitch. Some say it was a cascading technical failure, inevitable given how fragile the system had become. Others whisper it was deliberate. But there's one detail every official record carefully avoids. The systems that lost the data actually had the ability to restore it. The backups existed, the ledgers could be rebuilt, the numbers could return. They just never did. Because once humanity learned to survive without those numbers, reintroducing them would have caused something far worse than the original collapse. So the final question was never, can we bring money back? It was, should we? And that decision, the one they made in silence, is the story nobody tells. But maybe it's the only one that ever did.